Hi, and welcome to the very first Weedy Wednesdays here at Soda Farm Life. It's a little bit difficult to talk about plants in the winter, but we need to still be able to identify them. And today I want to take this plant into the kitchen. There's a couple things we can do here. This is Crampbark. So Viburnum trilobum is what this is. I'm in Ohio, and that's our native version of either we call this Crampbark or we call it Gilder Rose. It's a shrub in the Viburnum family. So this in the summer is going to have sort of a maple shaped leaf, and it will be a little bit lighter on the underside and darker on the top. In the summer and fall, it has these beautiful red berries, which have sort of collapsed on themselves here in the winter. Now, the berries sort of have a fun history here in our family. I was studying up on Crampbark, and I was reading about the use of the berries, which I had never used it. From a therapeutic standpoint, we really use the bark mainly. In Russia and in the parts of the world where my family comes from, so Scandinavia, they use these berries for blood pressure and to keep the cardiovascular system healthy. And they make a lot of wine and jelly and fun things with it. So this past year, after discovering that, I came out and I tasted one in the summer, and it was horrible. It was really, really awful. So I just came out here after the winter. So there's another berry here locally called aronia that you need to freeze for it to taste good. I wanted to see if that was the same here, and in fact it is better tasting now. When I brought my kids out though to see what they thought of the difference, my daughter informed me that they call this plant stinkberry. So when they were little, they're 11 and 12, so I guess smaller, they would come over and pick these berries. If you look up through here, you can see that get my camera person to look up and look around. There are a lot of berries on these bushes. So my kids would come out and pick all the berries and smash them up and make potions. They were making things to put around their forts in the evergreens to keep out the cats. And apparently it worked. That's not what we would do here. And now that I've seen that they do react favorably to freezing, this summer I will probably pick some, put it in a Ziploc bag and freeze it. That way it gets that freeze and thaw and changes the taste of the berry, but I don't have to wait all winter. The strategy here of the shrub is that it retains these fruits all the way through winter, and it's forage for birds. So there was so much. This was loaded, this shrub line. So it's been picked over by the birds a little bit, but there's still more forage. So this berry is really juicy. It's super, and even that is it's still pretty bitter. But my kids call it stinkberry. It does have sort of a little bit of an offensive odor. I'm not really making a great commercial here for you to grow this Crampbark and make beautiful jams and jellies, but we're gonna try it. The main reason that we use Crampbark, or that I've used Crampbark over the years, is for its bark. Crampbark is antispasmodic, and it's a pain reliever. So I'm going to take this into the kitchen today. We can use this internally to help with cramping, and you can see here I've just peeled. It's really easy to take this outer bark off just with a little bit of a knife. It peels instead of you needing to cut it. We're looking for this area of this bark, and I'm going to take a whole bunch of this in and make something for you in the kitchen here in a little bit. This is one of the plants that we were taught from the Native Americans that lived here before us. They used it predominantly for cramping. It has an affinity for the uterus, so it's really good for PMS sort of cramps and back pains. Today I'm going to make something that will be used topically. I have a tincture online that I make for cramping, and it's really popular, and we've used it for a lot of years. You can make a tea, you can make a tincture. Today I'm gonna make an oil. So let's head into the kitchen and I'll show you how to do that. Hi, welcome back. We have moved to the kitchen. So I brought in all of my sticks, and really only needed a few. It occurred to me as I was walking in that I should probably share a few things. There are times to pick your remedies, and when we talk about bark, there are very definite times for different plants. For crampbark, the spring, early spring, which is what we are right now, or late fall is when you want to take this new growth off. You need to be careful. You don't want to take all of the new ends because then there won't be any fruit or flowers. You want to take just a few of these, and you don't really need a lot. So let me show an easy way to prepare this once you get it in the kitchen. So I am using, this is one of my favorite peelers. It's just a really simple peeler, vegetable peeler. And this bark, not every tree that you're gonna wanna bark, tree or shrub, is gonna be as easy as this, but this one is really soft. So I am gonna potato peel my stem here. And I'm gonna put all the peelings into my jar. I am making an oil, so I'm gonna be infusing this, and there's a lot of different ways I can do this. The folkloric way would be to cover it in the oil and then allow it to steep for 4 to 6 weeks. And I like to do that with some of my oils, especially St. John's wort oil, which I'll show you later on here in the summer. But for this one, I'm just gonna do an oven infusion. So simple thing here is I'm gonna cut this into pieces. So as I mentioned, we can drink this, we can make it into a tea, I can make it into a tincture, we can then use it internally for cramping. And that's how I've used it for most of the time I've been using Crampbark. This one we're going to use for topical. So I'm making a sore muscle, sore joint relief oil. And this one is really good for striated muscles in the legs or the back. Just as it has action on the uterus when we use it internally, we can use it externally to relieve those muscles. It's really good for arthritis that has gotten so bound up in inflammation that the muscles and tendons around those joints are just blocked. So this is going to be really good. I have a tendency to have really tight backs of my legs and my hips, and so I believe a lot of that has come through childbirth. So if you have any of that, that's what this is going to be really good for. It should be good topically for cramping as well across the uterus. So I would probably warm it. I'm going to experiment with my massage therapist here for the next few months and see how this works in a massage oil. Let me show you how we're going to prepare this. So we've got our jar, and I am filled up to about here, so maybe about halfway. When we prepare an oil, no matter how we do it, we are going to cover our plant material. So I've used the stems that are peeled as well as the peelings, and I'm going to cover this by about, such a small jar, I'm probably going to cover it by about 1 inch. And I can put this into a double boiler and do it on the top of the oven or the stove. I can put a lid on this and sit it and allow it to steep without heat for 4 to 6 weeks. I would put this out of the direct sunlight, and I would make sure that everything is down below the surface of my oil if I was going to let it steep for 4 to 6 weeks. But I'm in a little bit of a hurry because I'm kind of curious about this. So I'm going to put it in the oven. It's my favorite way to do faster oils. So I've got my oven on at keep warm. So you want it to be a really low temperature. If you can get a temperature around 145, 150, I wouldn't go any further above 170. And put this into your oven and allow it to steep at least 24 hours. I like to even go to 48 hours sometimes. So I'm gonna put this into the oven, and through the magic of TV, I'm going to get one that's already done out. Okay, so I can now use this oil that has steeped and it has pulled the phytochemicals out of the inner bark of this plant into the oil. I can strain it and just use the oil itself to massage. I can add this into a salve. There's a lot of different directions that I can go with this, but I am today going to make it into an additive to magnesium flakes. This muscle relaxant ability from Crampbark can be extended also to asthma. So when the chest locks up, if you were dealing with somebody who was having a lot of muscles locked up across their chest from a cold, a flu, an asthma, an allergy attack, and it wasn't an emergency situation, you could put them into a bath with magnesium flakes that are coated with the Crampbark oil. Again, you can just use it topically. I'm gonna add it to the flakes. You can add it to the bath water at any time, but if you just put it in on top of the bath water, often it tends to float, and then when you get in, it'll just wind up on one spot of your body. Kind of gloms on. So if we put it onto the flakes, it tends to disperse it better and hold it in the water so that you can get more of a benefit from it. So I'm going to take like a good handful of magnesium flakes here. I have a big garden tub, so I am not going to be shy with my amount of magnesium flakes. Keep it in reason depending on how big your tub is. And then I'm gonna put about a half a teaspoon of the oil over top and stir it up and just let it sit. I may do this in the evening if I'm gonna take my bath at night. I may do this around dinner and let it sit. So it's gonna absorb into the bath salt and not be able to be washed away right away. There are a lot of things that we can do with Crampbark. I did bring in some berries, even at this tea. I could boil it down. The trick here is to add it with some sort of a sugar source. I can boil this down. This does have a high amount of vitamin C. And so that's one of the big benefits to Crampbark is it's one of our temperate zone givers of vitamin C. We have rose hips. We don't have oranges and lemons and limes and things that we think of when we think about vitamin C. We don't have those citrusy vitamin C providers. This is what we're stuck with, this stinky berry. But once it's made up, obviously it tastes good. It's in a number of very famous wines. I'm really excited to try it. We can take the bark. If we're gonna make it into a tea, we're gonna use a decoction because it's a bark. Again, we're not just gonna pour water over and make an infusion. We're gonna make a decoction with it, and then we could drink that to relieve muscle cramps, leg cramps at night, uterine cramps, asthma, or we can make it into a topical like I've done today. And I'm gonna store this. I will drain this and keep the oil in a closed jar that is labeled Crampbark oil. and I'll keep that off to the side so that later I can decide if I want to add some to a salve or if I want to keep doing bath salts. I am also going to use it just as an oil on my legs. So you can store that in a cool, dark place, your medicine cabinet, your linen closet, someplace that doesn't get super hot or cold, doesn't have huge fluctuations. It's going to keep it, and it's going to last pretty much forever. Oils do go bad sometime, but it takes quite a bit of time, and you know it just doesn't smell good anymore, and it's time to make more. So if you have crampbark planted, or if you want to head out and find it, it does grow in wild spaces. And again, here in Ohio, you're looking for Viburnum trilobum. Some people think that Viburnum opulus and Viburnum trilobum are so closely related that really trilobum, which is our native or our North American variety, is just a varietal. So you'll see both in commerce if you're buying this bark. You can dry the bark and do whatever you want later on. This is a good time. This early spring is a great time to be harvesting. So step out, be careful, more careful with the knife than I was. Step out and get yourself some twigs and skin them and make yourself a little something special. So I will catch you next Wednesday for Weedy Wednesday, and let me know if you give this a try. I want to hear all about it. I want to hear how it's working for you, or what you made, or where you found your crampbark. See you next time.